All right, so it's 3 o'clock. It's time to start our virtual chat with our middle school and high school parents. We're thrilled that you've been able to take some time to join us today. So just kind of want to talk to you a little bit about our setup. As I think you may be able to see on your screen, I'll be sharing parts of my screen throughout the meeting today. What we've done is last Monday, we asked you what questions do you have about this extended closure and if it extended beyond April 6th, which it is. So we took those questions that were submitted, we put them into some slides. And so what we're going to do today is we're going to go through as many of those questions that we possibly can. We've highlighted some of those that we'll get through today. Those questions that we don't get through, we're going to repeat this next week. We're going to do another virtual chat, community conversation with middle school and high school parents next Thursday, same time, 3 p.m. So if we don't get to your question that you submitted last week, we will next week. As well, in the email that was sent to you yesterday, you should have received a link to provide comments and feedback or questions throughout. So some of my colleagues have joined me on this chat today. They'll be asking questions and reviewing that as we go throughout to do that. So probably we'll be here for about an hour based on the last two that we've done today. But if you can't stay with us the whole time, that's completely understandable. This will be housed permanently on our website, so you can go back and watch the end of it or watch different portions to get your questions answered at any time. So I want to start by just talking and giving a little bit of an overview as where we're going. As we all know, schools are closed until May 1st. The first opportunity to possibly get back to school is on May 4th. And so we are instituting our remote learning plan. So up until this point, we gave students suggestions, opportunities to continue their learning. And we did that for a very strategic reason. I know that there's a question coming up, and I'll save it a little bit about what we did, why we did that. But we did that for a very strategic reason, so everybody can get settled in this new reality of what education looks like. I'd ask all of us to think, how would you react if the governor came on and said, hey, how you've done business and how you've operated as an organization for a lot of years on Thursday is going to fail to exist. And on Tuesday, you have to have a completely different setup and organizational structure. And we've been working hard over the last few weeks to put stuff into place, to put a plan into place for remote learning that is meaningful and meets the needs of our kids, our community, and our families. And so that's what we want to review with you today. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to share with you, I sent out an email earlier today to all of our parents detailing what remote learning is going to look like and what grading is going to look like for our middle school and high school students. So as you can see on your screen, this is just a screenshot of what's going to be out there. And I'll share with the links here in a little bit. But what we've done for the middle school is we've organized all of our classes by grade level. So as you can see in the bottom here, we have tabs for 6th grade, 7th grade, 8th grade, and our school counselors have a tab. So if I'm an 8th grade student and I look at my schedule, whatever my schedule for a 4th quarter would be, I'm going to go here. I'm going to find the course that I'm in. I'm going to click on the remote learning plans for that week, and I'm going to follow those remote learning plans, whatever directions are in there for my teachers to do that and to continue my learning moving forward. As you probably read in the email, really the focus for our remote learning opportunity during this time is how do we continue to engage students and continue learning so that we reduce the amount of gaps that are in place when students return back to school next year. So that's the overall approach and philosophy. But as a middle school parent, you're going to want to log on to this sheet when it goes live on Monday morning. Your child will look at their classes, click on the links for whatever week it may be. So for April 6th, you're going to look down this column and see what classes my child has. Click on those links and follow the learning plans that are there. We can't recreate school in a building to remote learning. So don't expect or think that your son or daughter is going to have to spend 6.5 to 7 hours a day doing remote learning. For middle school and high school students, for middle school, we say it probably will average between 2 to 4 hours a day, high school 3 to 4, but that ebbs and flows depending on the classes and the coursework that your child is engaged in. When we take a look at the high school, as you can see on your screen here, and I just grabbed something from the math department here. The high school is a little different because of the scope and the number of courses and teachers. Is same idea. You'll click on the link, you'll look at your fourth quarter schedule, but the tabs at the bottom, and there's a lot more than you can see on your screen right now, are organized by department. So I'm going to look as a student, I'm going to look at my schedule and I'm going to say, okay, I have a math class, and then I'm going to click on the math tab like we are here. And then I'm going to say, okay, well, I have Miss Hostler for my math class, and I have Algebra 1. So I'm going to click on her spreadsheet there to see what I've got to do for Algebra 1 for the week of April 6th. All the plans are based on the full week, full week of instruction. So for the high school, it's organized by department. Then within that tab, it's organized by teacher and course. So those are some of a brief overview of the sheets and the remote learning plans so you can access them. It's also important for us, if you see on your screen right now, I've got up our website, that we've linked everything in the same spot, whether you're on the district page or whether you're on the high school or middle school page. So if you look on every single page by shortcuts, it has a link for extended closure information. It also has a link for remote learning plans and resources. That's where everything is going to be. You don't have to wait for emails from staff or look in different spots. So extended closure information is just that. If you want to take a look at any email that I've sent out during the initial coronavirus start of it, all the way until the email I just sent out a few hours ago, it's all right here with some topics there for you to look at. Again, the remote learning plans and resources website is where we are going to house everything for remote learning for all of our students pre-K to 12. There's some general directions or explanations up top, an explanation of office hours for teachers and what those will look like. Resources that you may need, whether making copies or getting Wi-Fi, or options for getting Wi-Fi in your home are there for you. Chromebooks we've been working on, and Dave will give us an update on that. But if we scroll down, all of these links that are not there yet will be there by 8 a.m. on Monday morning. And this is where you're going to access all of the remote learning plans for the middle school and high school, and where you'll see a similar look to what we have here. So we know it's a lot, but we hope that you'll find that it's as seamless as it can be, and everything's in one spot for you to utilize. The other thing that I want to talk about before we move on to some of the questions and the presentation part of it is grading. I sent that to everybody as well, in addition to the remote learning plans. And you can read through the details, but specifically the focus that we're going to have at the secondary level is any work assigned April 6th and beyond will not be counted as a grade. So let's talk about the middle school first. The middle school will not give fourth quarter grades for any non-high school credited course. Their coursework, their report card will end at the end of third quarter. Whether we go back on May 4th or not, there will be no fourth quarter grades. There's some other questions within the presentation we're going to do about grades, so I'll hold those specific questions to later about what if my child could have handed in a test or didn't hand everything in for third quarter. We'll address that later. But for fourth quarter, we're not going to collect grades for classes. And the same is true for the high school. The high school, we're going to take a look at the second semester, and we're going to look at all of 18 weeks put together into one. So the high school is a little different in terms of, if we do come back on May 4th, grades will count, and grades will count towards their overall 18-week grading period. However, there will be no final exams, no matter what scenario is there. I know we'll get to the details a little bit later in terms of grading, but I want to explain to you a little bit of the rationale, because, you know, schools are based on kids do work, they turn it in, they give grades. What we've asked our teachers to do, and we met with them virtually earlier today, is that teachers can work with you based on the platform they're using for students to submit their work, for teachers to review that work and give descriptive and meaningful feedback. If you look at the educational research about how do we motivate kids, how do we engage kids, how do we extend learning for students, it's not based on grades. It's based on descriptive and meaningful feedback that's given by teachers on student learning. Grades should be an accurate and truthful reflection of student learning and mastery of content. And as we take a look at how do we set up in a remote setting and look at our equity issues across the district and develop and meet that standard of grading for all 5,500 students of ours, it's not a realistic task. And I'd also ask that as parents and as students, that we take a look at and understand and empathize and recognize that families have a lot of different experiences beyond what we experience in our own homes. As I take a look at making decisions for the entire district on grading, I have to realize that some families and some kids, we're worried right now just about financial wherewithal. We're worried about safety. We're worried about paying bills because my parents may be unemployed because of all of these shutdowns. We also have to look at what are the capabilities of our students in terms of Wi-Fi and bandwidth. Or what if I have 3 kids in my household and we only have one device for them to get on? We want to grade students based on what they do, not on a grade of equity or privilege or socioeconomic status or access to Wi-Fi or devices. And so that's why, although as we look at moving into a remote setting, that's why we made a decision as to not move forward with grading for the fourth quarter. And so what we look at and what we challenge our teachers with is this. Kids should be engaged and motivated to work and to do the lessons, the remote learning, because one, they have a meaningful relationship with the adult and the teacher in the classroom that they're working with. And two, our teachers are creating meaningful, engaging, and inspiring work for them to engage in their learning. We understand that that may not resonate with 100% of our students, but we feel it's going to hit a large majority of our students. And so that's a rationale as to why we decided not to assess grades during the fourth quarter. If you look on the sheet that I send out or the email, 2 other points that I want to make about grading. The first of all is athletic eligibility. All athletic eligibility will be based for fall sports on the preceding quarter. So that means for middle school students, it will be based on your third quarter grades. And for high school students, it will be based on the full 18-week grading period. It may just be third, it may be more if we come back. And finally, for our middle school and high school students that are participating in College Credit Plus, please remember that you must follow the grading and the remote learning procedures based on the college that you're working with. So you've got to work with Tri-C or CSU or whichever LCC, whatever you're working with. They will dictate the grading procedures for your College Credit Plus course, not the school district. So what I want to share is, as you can see the presentation on the screen, we've talked a little bit about this, about Governor DeWine's order. We're going to talk a lot about the House Bill 197. It was passed recently. It gives a lot of rules and procedures and flexibility on what's going to happen. As you may have heard, state testing has been suspended for this school year. They've taken a look at graduation requirements, and now it's a local decision for our seniors that maybe needed some points to graduate locally to determine what on-track graduation looks like and determine that at Strongsville High School. Just in case you didn't see some of the emails, breakfast and lunch is still being provided to our families in need. It's being provided on Mondays and Wednesdays only, but we're providing meals for the entire week. We do understand that some families maybe weren't receiving free or reduced lunches a few weeks ago, but because of the financial and the stay-at-home order, that maybe there is a need for you now based on your current situation. So please reach out. Go to our food services page on the website and email our director of food services, and he can help give you some guidelines on how we can help support and make sure that you have food for your Strongsville City Schools children at home. And as I've also shared, all district playgrounds are closed and the fields at Packatan Stadium in the middle school are closed. Unfortunately, we were not able to have individuals adhere to those social distancing guidelines. And also we're playing competitive sports on those fields. So we're not saying they're closed forever. They're closed for now. We'll review that on a weekly basis and determine if we can open those up at a later time. So what I want to continue to do is we're going to go through some questions you've had, focusing on classwork and remote learning, student services and technology, and some of my colleagues are going to help me out with that. We'll talk about building access, fees, district calendar, and if we have time, there may be a few questions on extracurriculars. But as I said, you have the ability to submit live questions. After each kind of header, we'll take a break and get answer some questions and also answer them at the end. So what we want to do, we're going to start off with the question number 1, and I'm going to turn it over to our communications coordinator, Dan Faust, who is going to answer question one and maybe highlight again what I talked about with the websites. Dan?
Hi, everyone. I just wanted to say I hope all the families in our district are staying safe and healthy, and we appreciate you being on this community conversation with us today to outline some of these or to answer some of these questions that you might have. As it relates to a centralized platform for teachers to conduct their lessons and have a central location for our students to reference their classes, as Dr. Ryba mentioned, we have set up on all of our web pages two easy to find shortcuts. They're in the same location on whether you're on the district's main page or whether you're on the middle school or the high school landing page. The first shortcut deals with questions and information and updates about our extended closure for the district. That site includes all of our communication that we've sent out as a district. It also has some other FAQs, and then at the same time, it also has some helpful resources and links to anything from the CDC to the Ohio Board of Health, and helping our students deal with social and emotional issues that might be coming up because of the situation that we're in. So I would encourage you to take a look at that site. We'll change that and update that as often as we need to. The second shortcut underneath that is our remote learning plan and resources page. And as Dr. Ryba outlined before, it does have some general information about access to free Wi-Fi that some companies are offering. Staples is offering some free services to print out materials, classroom materials. So that information is there. But probably the most important links are those remote learning plans for your students, and those will all be linked by Monday at 8 a.m. And you can access those 24 hours a day, 7 days a week on our website in that location. So we hope that we've made it easy for people to find that information and not stress about going to all sorts of different locations and having all sorts of communication come to you, because I know you're being bombarded by a lot of information, and not only from the school district but from many different entities. So please refer to these links as often as you need to, and we'll have information updated as often as possible. And if you see something that's missing, or if you have a question about it, please don't hesitate to reach out to any of us, to your teachers. We're happy to answer any questions or clear up any confusion or misinformation that might be out there for you.
Thanks, Dan. Moving on, I'm going to ask our Director of Curriculum, Aaron Green, to come on and talk to us. Aaron, if you can take questions 2 and 4 and read them to the folks, so in case they can't see the screen as clearly as we can, so they know what you're answering.
Sure. So number 2, the question is, what about the advanced placement class tests that you paid for? So that's a great question. AP College Board, they realize that everybody in the country is in this similar situation. So they are trying to be very forgiving and amenable to the situation. So the best answer I can give is to go to apcentral.collegeboard.org. And again, you could Google just AP Central and it will come up for you. The basic, the bottom line is you have 2 options. You can cancel the test with no penalty, so no charges. They'll give you your refund or your money back. Or they're allowing students to do something that they don't typically do, and that's test at home online. It's going to look different. It's going to be a 45-minute test, and it's going to be all kind of extended response. So they're mitigating the ability for students to use their resources and look up answers. But again, if you go to that website, it talks about what content is on the test, what content is not on the test. when will these tests be taken, what's going to be covered, what do we need to prepare for. And they're also running live videos or recorded videos at times for the students to continue their AP instruction. So one more time, that was apcentral.collegeboard.org. In addition, your students, classroom teachers have this information, but I think it's really nice if you just want to go on there and have your student or you take a look and see what's expected and how that's going to look for this circumstance. Question 4 is about the ACT results that the juniors took on March 10th, the timeline for that. And as far as we know, we talked with ACT just this week. They are still on track. Their time frame is 3 to 8 weeks from when the test was taken. So what they told me is 3 to 8 weeks, which I know is a big span. They will email me when the results are ready. In addition, they're going to mail a letter home to each student who took the ACT. In that letter is going to be the child's username and access code to go to a website to pull up their results. So again, they're talking anywhere from 3 to 8 weeks. As we know, it is on track. If it's been longer than that and you haven't heard anything, please feel free to reach out to me. I can let you know if I've heard from them. I do have results. They'll send me a link to everything as well. But look for a letter in the mail as your first step from ACT.
Thank you, Erin. Continuing on to question 5 and 6, why did Strongsville not institute at-home required graded schoolwork like some surrounding districts? I talked a little bit about this earlier, and my focus is on what is in the best interest of our students in our community, and less about comparing ourselves to other districts and what they may be doing that's in the best interest of their kids and their community. So this question was asked a little bit ago, so let me explain the rationale for the last 3 weeks that we had. We had 6 instructional days, then spring break, then 5 instructional days. And I made the decision in consultation with our other administrative team members and our Board of Education that our primary responsibility and primary focus is the social emotional health and well-being of our students and our families. This is a change in how we live our daily lives, let alone school. And the idea that we were going to go home and then put the pressures on our parents of here's a packet, or here's worksheets, or here's a test you have to take, or here's assignments that you have to complete as you're figuring out how do I even live life? How are we going to work this in a stay-at-home environment? We thought would put undue stress on our families. So I appreciate and applaud the work of our neighboring districts. There's many neighboring districts that did the same exact plan that we put in place. And we thought, as we said, the first needs that we need to address are the needs of safety, the needs of comfort, the needs of social emotional needs of our kids. And we felt that was best done without putting pressures on our kids and parents to get graded work done. And I think I've explained the rationale for why we're not going to grade work moving forward in terms of the equity concerns that are there and the reality of having a grade be an accurate and truthful reflection of student learning. Moving on to question 6, which is what about Polaris students? What works for them? We'll collaborate with Polaris and be able to share their remote learning plan with you when we get it. I don't have that for you at this time, but Polaris, even though we collaborate and we're partners with them, they are a separate school district. So I'm assuming, and I would ask that if your child goes to Polaris or participates in Polaris programs at their Middleburg site to reach out to them to get access or information on Polaris's plans, access and information on Polaris classes that are taught in our school district will be on our remote learning plans like any other course. So moving on now to some additional questions on remote learning. Erin, we're going to come back to you for question 8. So what will be done about end of course exams for graduation?
Great. So as Dr. Ryba mentioned earlier, if you're a senior and you needed to take one of those tests, you're in good shape. The State Department of Education has realized the circumstance we're in. As long as you were on track to graduate, you were planning to take that test, that will be waived for you. So that's a decision that the high school, the counselors and the administration are making. But please know, if that was the only thing keeping you from graduating, that will not interfere with graduation. If you're a junior and you are slated to take one of the tests, maybe for graduation points, you'll still have an opportunity as it stands now for next fall to take those tests. Additionally, realizing that, again, everybody in Ohio is in the same position. So State Department has to be realistic. They have to be accommodating for students when looking at graduation points and pathways. And based on everything I've seen so far with their guidance, I have strong faith that they will be. So we don't have a definitive answer right now, other than if you were needing this to graduate, you are still okay to graduate, if that was your limiting factor.
Thank you, Erin. In terms of questions 15 or 11 and 12 on that sheet, 11, how will tests and grades be submitted, and will fourth quarter grades be A to F, or will they be shifted to pass fail? We've answered that, and just to reiterate, work will be submitted based on teacher direction. Descriptive feedback will be given on the learning, but letter grades will not be assessed to that, and we will not have fourth quarter grades for the middle school at all. We may have some grades collected if we return at the high school, but those would be combined in a full semester grade that's based on all work done in those 18 weeks from the first of the year to the end of the school year. And we will not have finals, so there'll be no calculations of finals in that grade. And just in case, I think it may come up later, but just in case it does, I want to talk about students that may have had missing work or had a test to make up from the third quarter and how those grades will be finalized. So we were able to finish the entire third quarter except for one day. So if your child had a test to make up, had missing assignments that were due, as I said earlier, and it bears repeating, we are always going to do what's in the best interest of the student as we move throughout this mandated closure. So teachers are going to accept, collect, and grade work that should have been done in the third quarter that wasn't, for whatever reason it may have been done. And that grade can be used to help improve a student's grade. If the work is collected and it actually takes the grade down, we won't count it at that time, and whatever grade the student had on March 12th would be the grade that's calculated and reported for the grade period. Also, we come into this next scenario, which is at the middle school level, you pass a course or fail a course for a year. At the high school, you pass or fail based on the semester. So another question is, what do I do? My child failed the third quarter, or he or she is on track to fail for the year. Now that you're not collecting grades for fourth quarter, how does that impact them? Again, teachers have the discretion and will work with you on an individual basis, with your child on an individual basis, if they are at risk to fail a course for the semester or the year, and they won't have the opportunity to make up any work or improve because we're not counting fourth quarter grades. Teachers can assign and collect and grade work that would be in the best interests of the student to help them and support them in passing if they've done the work to deem that they're able to pass the course. The other thing that we've given direction on is, let's say one of the things you're missing from third quarter is a test. It may be difficult to make up a test. So teachers will work with your children on an alternative assignment that will be collected and graded and added in lieu of the test to help students during this time, because fourth quarter will not be there. So moving on to some of the additional questions that we have on this topic. Erin, we're coming back to you for 15 and 16.
Okay, question 15 is asking how much work a student should be doing each day. How do we know that kids are staying on track? And so to give a ballpark, I'm going to reiterate what Dr. Ryba said earlier. Our school day is not going to mirror a day that kids had been spending in school. So we're not expecting them to sit and do 7-8 hours of straight work. A reasonable, realistic remote learning plan would put middle school at between 2 to 3, maybe 4 hours some days, knowing, there isn't a general rule. Kids are going to vary in their needs and their work ethic and the speed at which they complete work. But that's a general guideline. For high school, same thing. It's going to depend upon courses and, how many courses and what's going into those as far as the work. But we would say anywhere between 2 and 4, maybe 3 to 4 hours a day. Again, knowing there's going to be variability. So how do we know if our kids are on track? We have each week, as Dr. Ryba talked about and Dan talked about, teachers are going to be posting their assignments on a weekly basis on our website. So you as a parent or you as a student can go in each week and see the work. So you know exactly for each week what should be done and how much needs to be covered, and then you'll move on to the next week. Our teachers are going to have office hours, which I believe Dr. Ryba will get into here in a little bit, but that's a great time for students and parents to interact with the teachers. That's when students can get feedback from the work that they've turned in or what they're working on. Parents can call with questions. They can email, however the teacher has it set up. And absolutely, teachers can let you know what your child is, what they're working on, what they've seen from them. Are they submitting anything to them to get some of that specific descriptive feedback from the teachers? For 16, the question is there a minimum number of hours per day or week that a student needs to be working on schoolwork? Again, there's no general rule for this. We absolutely want to keep kids learning, keep them engaged. However, we don't have a specific number of minutes that we'll allocate. We are trying to do some engaging activities, and they may not always involve sitting in front of the computer or doing things online. So they may have art, music, phys ed, different lab experiences, social emotional type experiences where they're not on the computer, and that would count toward their time. So it's not a cut and dry answer, unfortunately, but I think a good use of time, or a good use to kind of gauge that time, is checking in with their teachers and students checking in and making sure that what they're working on is the right amount.
Thank you, Erin. Continuing on with question 19, Assistant Superintendent Jenny Pelko is with us today. And if you want to, Jenny, give our parents a highlight on question 19.
Yeah, so College Credit Plus, we've gotten a lot of questions on that. I know the counselors put together a nice letter about our students that are going to be signing up in the future for next year. But this question deals with summer. And is there an alternative plan so that kids do not miss out on, for example, Tri-C registration for College Credit Plus courses to take in the summer and or even the fall? And so we're working closely with Tri-C and trying to get the answers. I know our counselors have been in contact with those folks. And so right now, the guidance is either students, if they have a 3.0 grade point average, they may automatically be able to just forego the placement test and go right into college credit, and or they are looking at doing an online test for students that want to enter. So they're still, Tri-C's still trying to figure that out. And as soon as we know, we will definitely let you guys know on the qualifications to sign up for those classes. Just another thing that I'd like to share, as Dr. Ryba stated at the beginning, you do need to go to your individual colleges and make sure you are following whatever learning plans they have at this time. For example, Brigham Young is still requiring things, and there are some of our seniors, I believe, that are taking PE through that, and they need to finish. And I believe it's by May, the first week in May, they need to finish those classes, and if you don't, you're in jeopardy of not graduating. So if that applies to you, make sure you get in there. The counselors wanted a shout out on that. So again, just make sure you're following whatever college requirements that you have through your individual colleges that you're taking CCP with. That's very important.
Thank you, Jenny. And Erin, we're going to come back to you for the next question, 21. What if my child was supposed to take a state test to earn graduation points? Will they be behind now?
Okay, and I would say that is similar to what I answered before. If you're actually graduating and that's what you're intended to do with the test, you are on track. You're not going to be held back from graduating. If you're working toward your 18 points, as we knew it before we shut down, we'll have the testing in the fall as it stands, but I do anticipate the state of Ohio making some special dispensation for our students because they didn't have this opportunity to take the test. So we'll wait and see what comes out as far as guidance with that.
Thanks, Erin. Question 23 and 25C, I knew it was on here somewhere. So this is what I answered in the last time about how can a student improve his or her semester grade if she is stuck with only her third quarter grade. Teachers have been given the discretion to work with students and have the ability to accept work, to address some challenges that may have been there in the third quarter, or to help students get a passing grade or earn a passing rather than earn a passing grade for the entire semester at the high school. And question 25, we did answer that. Yes, kids will be able to make up missed exams or work from third quarter at any time if it can help improve their grade. However, as I said earlier, it may not be exams in this setting. It may be an alternative assignment created by the teacher to substitute for that exam. So I think, yes, that is the end of the classwork remote learning part of it. I'm going to turn it over to Aaron and my colleagues if there's any questions that have come in that we can answer before we move on to student services.
Sure. There are just a handful. A couple of them go together. Is the schoolwork required, even if it's not going to be graded? And are there going to be repercussions for students who don't complete the work?
So in terms of those very specific words of is it required and repercussions, we have to trust that we're all doing the best that we possibly can in a remote learning environment with our abilities to provide instruction in a remote learning environment. So is it required? We have no ability to enforce the requirement is the reality of the situation. So in terms of a school perspective, yes, we are requiring the work. We're putting it out there. We're asking our students to complete the work. Many of our teachers will ask them to submit the work. As Aaron kind of alluded to, with office hours, our teachers will be available during office hours, whether it be to answer your questions or student questions via email, be available for a Google Hangout or a virtual chat or meeting. Many of our teachers are going to be working outside of the office hours and providing online content to our students to engage with. So we have encouraged our teachers to use a method of communicating with our students that can be saved and shared so students can access and interact with it at any time. If you think of a YouTube video is there all the time. It doesn't matter what time of day. I can click on the YouTube video, get my instruction, learn, and get some clarification. We use a program called Screencastify that teachers may be using. They may be using their YouTube channel to do that. Flipgrid's another app that we use. So a lot of our teachers will be doing some Google Meets to interact with students, and they're already doing that already. A lot of our teachers will be using this one-way communication of, I'm going to record a lesson and share it with you to help guide you in your weekly remote learning. So we are encouraging. We feel strongly that if we have those relationships with kids and we develop meaningful and engaging work, students will engage in the learning experiences. But in terms of can we physically require work and make sure it's being done in this remote setting? No, we cannot. Will there be repercussions? Based on our grading structure that we shared, the only repercussions that we will have is if students haven't met the requirements of a course beyond what they are based on what they've been able to demonstrate in the first 3 quarters or the full year if there's some opportunity to come back at the high school level. Kids will earn whatever credits that they were able to earn at the high school level. That will still go on, but it will be based on the grades that were earned up through 3rd quarter. Other questions, Erin?
Sure. This one you just talked a lot about, but what kind of accountability measures are in place for the teachers while they're off?
So in terms of accountability measures for the teachers, I just want to say, as I guess a little commercial for our staff, I have been so impressed and just feel blessed to work with such a great group of professionals, from our support staff to administrative staff to our teachers, really embracing and learning new tools, new software, new ways to enhance and engage in instruction in this remote learning. So in terms of how do we as a district, how do I as superintendent make sure that we're all moving in the same direction? Everything that we've talked about today is shared with me, is shared with our district administrative team, our high school administrative team. They are reviewing all of the plans to just make sure links are ready, to make sure we have parity between content areas. And so, they all have office hours that they're going to share. I do not have concerns with our teachers being able to rise to the challenge to be able to meet the demands of this new learning environment. I think we also have to be understanding that our teachers and administrators, we're people too. And we have families at home. I know a lot of our administrators and teachers are trying to manage, how do I teach during the school day? And I've got 3 kids under the age of 7 that I also have to manage because my spouse works, or maybe I'm a single parent. So that's where we have to be patient and understanding and supportive of one another during this, that everybody is doing the best that they can. We do have procedures in place to make sure that we're providing consistent experiences between teachers, between teams. But I have the utmost trust in our staff that they're always going to do what's in the best interest of our kids, not just the minimum standards, but above and beyond, to do what we possibly can to make sure we reduce those gaps for our kids, so that they can be as successful as they can when they return to us next school year.
Okay, and the final question is going to lead into our next section. So
Okay.
I'm going to go ahead and pose it, and then we can have Mr. Trujillo address this. I think he will as he's presenting. The question is, what about students that are in special education? Are they expected to do the same work or the same program that's listed online?
So Andy, if you want to take that question, and then the rest of the green highlights on this slide are yours.
Okay, great. Yeah, that's a great question. Many of our students with disabilities still are accessing the general education curriculum, which is always our intent for a least restrictive environment. And so our teachers and our special educators are working very hard to ensure accessibility to all students. Number 27. While I understand that all students will be affected with regression, my concern is with students who have specialized instruction through an IEP or 504 plan. Is the district considering different summer school and ESY qualifications to help those students who may not bounce back as easily? That's a great question as we are getting closer to summer. ESY stands for Extended School Year, which is a federal requirement within special education law. However, every state in the country interprets it a little differently and has their own language, which is sometimes confusing as we get on the internet and we research what happens with ESY. We see Michigan does one thing, Tennessee does another thing, Ohio does another thing. In Ohio law, our focus is on regression and recoupment. And fortunately, within your child's IEP, there's a particular section that should have a date as to when your team will reconvene the team to talk about the data that we would use for eligibility for ESY. So if that doesn't completely answer your question, I would check the IEP and then also check with your special educator for your child. Number 28, my kid has IEP services. Can this be done online? The answer is yes. We are hoping to do that to the best of our abilities, and our special educators are working very hard as we speak right now to figure that out, to be quite honest with you. This is something they're not used to. Again, it won't replicate the services your child might get throughout the typical school day. This is new to our special educators, but they're working very hard to come up with activities and support and learning that is specific to your child's particular needs. Every special education teacher will reach out to every parent of a child with a disability to bridge the partnership during this time and to talk to you specifically through email or through a phone call about what are the needs you see at home during this time as well. Number 29, my daughter is in the 8th grade and has special needs. Can the high school transition meeting still transpire, maybe over the phone or electronically? So in Strongsville, we have a practice where we, as students move from elementary or from preschool to elementary and elementary to middle and middle to high school, we have meetings to help ease anxiety and help bridge the communication between that transition as a child moves through school. So this is nothing that's required legally. It's something that we do as we want to make sure the child is as successful as possible. During the school closure, though, our focus has really been how do we adapt and adjust to remote learning and special education, and how do we make sure we reach compliance? That is our main focus right now. So that although that's currently not on the table in terms of having those remote transitions, it's not to say that it might not happen. If you have a specific concern, I encourage you to reach out to your child's special education teacher. The next question, number 30, if schools remain closed and remote learning is implemented, how does the district plan to support their special education students and maintain a least restrictive environment for them? We have a plan to support students with disabilities and what the Ohio Department of Education is calling a good faith effort. So as we look at a future question, I believe, about FAPE, the Ohio Department of Education is saying, let's make the best good faith effort we can in terms of partnering with our parents and communicating with them and collaborating them as we move forward. No child is receiving their least restrictive environment right now as we're all at home, unfortunately, on a stay-at-home order. Number 31, my child is on a 504 plan. How will potentially learning from home affect his 504? Well, Section 504 accommodations will still be implemented to the best of our ability. For example, if your child receives extended time to do work, any classwork or on a test, that accommodation would be provided for your child. If you and the case manager for the 504 plan are finding it perhaps difficult to implement, then you should problem solve with that case manager for future assignments.
We'll stay on the line, Andy, because we got a few more questions for you. We're going to skip 32, 33, and 34 for this time. But if you want to go down and answer 35 and 36 for our parents.
Sure. 35 is how will an IEP or ETR that is due in April be handled? How will formal assessments be completed to use for guiding the ETR and IEP? Well, our staff has been given specific guidelines and steps to complete in order to have IEP and ETR meetings remotely, either through phone call or virtually like we're doing right now. So that meeting will still be taking place and you should hear from the school very soon. If there's any formal assessments that are needed for an ETR and IEP, unfortunately, we're going to have to delay those until school resumes because a lot of those assessments require direct teacher to student contact. And then finally for me at this time, how are students with autism, for those who need special types of assignments, going to get their work? Well, all parents of students with disabilities will be contacted, as I said earlier, and that's where this contact is critical. And many of our students with autism do receive many related services, and those folks will be contacting you to see what is the best avenue for them to receive their education remotely through teletherapy or other means.
Thank you, Andy. Aaron, before we move on to technology, any questions that have been received about student services that we'd like to answer?
No, none about student services.
Okay, so let's go on to the next slide, which is technology. So our Director of Instructional Technology, Dave Binkley, is with us. So Dave, if you can give a update to our parents on these three questions that are listed.
All right, question number 37 states, will our kids be able to get their Chromebooks from school? How do I sign up and where do I pick up? So from Dr. Riva's emails, you see that there had been a Chromebook request form that had gone out, and parents were able to sign up to receive a Chromebook if you're in middle school. If you're in high school, you should already have your Chromebooks hopefully with you. So the pickups for our Chromebooks start tomorrow at 9 a.m. Those of you who filled out the request form should have gotten a follow-up email with the exact information on how to sign the contract and to select a pickup time. If you're unable to do that, there will be another round of Chromebook availability starting next week, but those details will be ironed out after we go through this first round. Question number 38, do we have to have a Strongsville Chromebook to access materials? And the answer to that is no. All of our students have an scmustangs.org account. This is actually a Google account. You can actually access it from any device, preferably from a Chrome browser, just because it is Google associated, and some of the tools our teachers will be using are Chrome extensions and add-ons. So when they log into any device, they can just use @scsmustangs.org with their normal logon, and they'll have complete access to all of their documents in Google Drive. Question number 39 states, 2 of my 3 kids are being asked to connect to their classes using the Zoom app. Zoom is blocked by the SCS Chromebooks. My junior only takes CCP classes and Polaris and cannot use her Chromebook for most of her work because of security settings. Under these circumstances, is there a way that we can remove these blocks? So the first part there is Zoom. As a district, we've been paying close attention to not only the governing acts on us as SIPA and COPA, but also some of the chatter that's going on in the tech forums. There's been a lot of security issues with Zoom. So we've been focusing most of our efforts into using Google Meets with our teachers to reach out to students because it's a little bit more of a closed environment. And then when it comes to CCP classes, our Chromebooks are designed, or the safety protocols we've enacted are for, in-district use on campus. CCP classes have not been open to our district devices before. And as of right now, we're going to continue those safety protocols. We may revisit that as time goes on. And the same thing goes with Polaris. Polaris gives their students their own login accounts. They have their own safety protocols as well. We have been in contact with them about the possibility of using some of our student accounts with their programs, but that is up to their entity to determine what their safety protocols are. But we're trying to make sure if we make any changes to our safety protocols, it doesn't affect just one student, but every student within our district.
Thank you, Dave. Thank you, Dave, for answering those questions. I want to move on to building and facility access. So I'm going to ask our operations manager, Steve Breckner, to hop on and talk about question 41, which is how are we going to ensure that the students required to go back to the school retrieve their books and belongings, will not come into contact with other students and be safe? And how are we going to do this in kind of this building opening to get materials question?
All right. We do have a plan that we've been developing that would accomplish those things of ensuring we do not have a large amount of people in the buildings at the same time. We're looking at resources that we can use within the district, people in strategic places within the buildings, because these are two of the larger buildings in the district, to help encourage students not to congregate, to make sure that students are entering, being in the building with parents or not, and then leaving safely. We are working out the details of that plan, and the most important piece of that plan that we've not been able to finalize yet are the dates of that plan. As the governor has his press conferences, the details are changing concerning dates and when lockdown procedures are going to be modified. So as we get directives at the same time that the rest of the state does, we'll be able to implement this plan. We'll be able to get this plan out to the city with enough time so that people can work their schedule to be in the buildings. But we do have that plan for staff to come in, for students to come in, and in a tiered manner, so that the building is not overcrowded and we create an unsafe environment here in the buildings.
Thank you, Steve. Jenny, why don't you take the next one, which is about when will we be able to pick up medications, EpiPens, inhalers, et cetera?
Sure. So fortunately, that Friday prior to being closed, we had the option for parents to come and pick up a lot of our medications that we were housing in our buildings. I've spoken with Crystal Tackaberry, our district nurse, and she feels that the majority of essential medications right now have already been picked up. However, we understand that there can be EpiPens, inhalers, and other medications that are still remaining in the buildings. And, we will keep them safe for you right now. We don't really want to have, again, people entering and disobeying the order by the governor. But if there is something that you are in need of and you ran out, or there's an issue right now where you need something, please reach out to your building principal, who in turn can get to Crystal, and we can try to make some sort of an arrangement if it's definitely necessary. Otherwise, depending on what happens, we'll come up with a plan if those things need to be picked up if we do not return by the end of the year.
Thank you, Jenny. The next question that we have is in regard to if school is closed the rest of the year, how are students going to turn in their textbooks, get stuff from lockers? We want to let you know that this is on the list. But we will deal with this at a later date. How we've kind of formulated our decision making is we're taking things in different chunks of time. So We've took our decision making up through April 4th or 3rd. Now we've taken our decision making to what decisions, what procedures, systems do we need to put in place so that we can continue on through May 1st. And then once we decide or hear what the governor is going to do for the rest of the school year, we will make those decisions moving forward. So that decision, we'll have a plan in place. We'll allow that to happen in accordance with what the federal and state orders are in terms of social distancing and mass gatherings. But that's a decision that's going to be on hold until a later time. So next we're going to talk, next section we want to talk about is district fees and finances. So I'm going to ask our district treasurer, George Anagnostou, to get ready to get online. We've got 4 questions to answer to give you guys an update as to where we're at with fees and other tuition and things of that nature. George?
Thank you, Mr. Ryba. I hope everyone's staying safe and healthy at home. So jumping in, question 45. What happens to all the school fees we are required to pay for the whole year? Will we be reimbursed for the remainder since the closure will be possibly extended? That is something we're currently looking at, but we need to see what happens at May 1st and if we come back to school or what instruction is going to look like. If we do not come back to school, we will need to look at all the fees by type to determine what can be prorated as to what was used and what was not used. And then from there, we'll need to make a recommendation to the Board of Education as to what we think will be appropriate, and they will ultimately decide as a board on that decision. And the key date there was the May 1st, so we know which decision we would have to make. That way, we're not making one decision now and changing something later. Question 46: will you open power schools even if fees are not paid? Yes, due to the circumstances that we're currently living in, Power Schools has been open as of today, as of this morning. 48, will the pay to participate fees be refunded, at least partially? That goes back to same answer as question 45. We'll have to see what happens. As of now, OSHA has not officially canceled spring sports. They're currently suspended or on hold. So we'll see what happens with spring sports based on OSHA and then make a recommendation to the board from there. So the fees are on our radar as to address. We just ultimately need to know what's going to happen after May 1st, if the closure is going to be extended and what instruction is going to look like. And lastly, the last question, 49, how do I pay parking and outstanding fees so I can graduate if we're out of school for the rest of the year? Currently, you can pay them online through Pay School Central. To access the link, you can go out on our website under For Communities, and then there should be a link for Pay School Central, so you can pay any of the fees there. Or once we come back in session, the secretary should be in the building to where you can pay the fees in person. And that's all I have, unless there's any additional questions.
No, I think you covered it. Thanks for giving a highlight. And as you said, everything's on hold until we determine whether we're coming back on May 4th or whether we're not coming back this year to determine what we're going to do with fees. And that will be a board decision. In terms of a couple questions that I can answer as we wrap up, and then Aaron will let me know if there's any other questions for the group. How will school closure impact the end of the school year, summer break, and the start of next school year? Based on the direction from the state, the remote learning plan will count towards the required minimum hours for students. So unless the law changes or direction changes from the state level, we have no plans to extend the school year beyond our May 29th last day of school. And we have no plans to change the start of the 2020-21 school year for next year. So the school calendar will be the school calendar unless rules from the state level change. I think these are the last questions. How will auditions for high school marching band be handled? And I'm going to lump that with 55, which is what does this mean for tryouts for fall sports, cheerleading, color guard, etc. Our staff and our advisors of that are working out those plans right now. I know our music staff, our vocal and instrumental music directors are throwing around the idea of virtual auditions where students would record and submit. I also know, like cheerleading, which is shared as an example, is talking about preliminary plans to do virtual tryouts. So nothing definitive right now. We've got to see where we're at maybe in a few weeks in terms of possibly returning this year. But just please know it is on the radar of our coaches and our staff for those things that usually happen in the spring that may not if the governor closes us the rest of the year. They are working on plans for virtual opportunities. In terms of prom and commencement, I want to assure all of our parents and our seniors that we are going to do everything in our power to make sure that these primary events that mark a rite of passage for our seniors stay in place with prom and commencement. So as I've shared earlier, we do have a backup date for prom. If we're not allowed to have a mass gathering or we're not back in school, the makeup date at the same location will be June 26th. If for some reason we are not able to hold that date, we do have a backup for our backup plan. The only thing that we have to work on is obviously there's going to be a point where it's going to be too late to hold these things as parents and families may have other plans or kids begin to go to college or into the workforce or into the military. Things may change. And obviously this is all dependent on where we're at as a state and a country with the coronavirus at that point in time. In terms of commencement, we have worked with CSU just in between our conferences here today. CSU has come back with backup dates. We're still discussing and finalizing whether that's going to be an option. So I'm not at liberty to share what that backup date for commencement at CSU will be. But again, we have a backup for that backup of something that we can do if it doesn't work at CSU or that date isn't held. So we are going to do everything possible in our power to have prom and commencement, and we've got plans underway to make sure our kids can have that experience if possible. So with that ends our questions that were submitted that we wanted to talk about today. Don't forget that we're going to come back and loop back to some of the ones that you asked that we didn't get to today. And then I'm going to turn it over to Aaron. Just we've got maybe about 5 minutes or so if there's any questions that you received that we should answer for our parents and community members.
Sure. So the first two are tech related. What if we miss the Chromebook request deadline? And is there a way to print from the school Chromebooks that we have?
For the first one, if you missed the first deadline, even since we started having this conversation, I've had some families reach out to me saying they no longer have a need for a district-owned device since they can use their device. If you send me an email, you can find my email on the school website, and I will start granting individuals up until we're out of devices for tomorrow. And then once we reach the limit of the devices we have made available for tomorrow, I will then reach out to anyone who has emailed me and tell you when you can pick them up at a later date. Concerning printing from Chromebooks, this is something we don't allow in district. And honestly, I don't think we've really tried much, or students have tried outside of our district. So through Wi-Fi, I do not believe that they are able to print at the current moment. We can do some research and see if we can find a mobile friendly app that we can push out to students to print. However, I do believe, as I've done this for my own Chromebook at home, that if you actually connect your Chromebook up using a USB connector and directly connect or print locally, as we call it in tech, you can actually print from the device.
Okay. There was a question about students that are going to be taking accelerated math placements next year and the ALEX program that they're supposed to work on over the summer. Does that plan remain the same? And I can go ahead and answer that and say yes. We just recently got the licenses. So within the next few weeks, you will be hearing from the curriculum department, getting the login information, keeping in mind it's a summer program. However, if kids are looking to start it now, they'll be that much ahead of the game. Question about incoming 9th grade orientation. I know it is hard to tell at this point, but do we feel there's going to be a rescheduling of that to get the kids acclimated to the high school?
Yeah, that's a great question, and it's something that we definitely want to do. As I said earlier, we're going to put that in the after May 1st decision basket of what we want to do. we're tracking all of the meetings, all of the events, all of the things that are missed due to the closure. We're not going to be able to recreate or hold all of them. But yes, if there's an opportunity, whether it's our fifth graders coming up to the middle school for their traditional visit or our eighth graders going to the high school, we will look for opportunities as are available based on when we're able to reopen the school district.
Okay, and then one more question, Dr. Ryba. For teachers for their office hours, is it better to make an arrangement ahead of time for kids to connect with them, or anytime during that hour? What's the best way to go about that?
I think you've got to work directly with your teacher, but I would always say proactive is better. If you know that, hey, I've got a question or I'm stuck here, or I'd like to talk through something with you, sending an email or a message the night before or the day before would be great. If not, you can always log on during their office hours and to work through it that way. So I'm sure as we all learn and grow and live in this remote learning environment, some of these questions will gain clarity and we will understand procedures that will go into place. But if you know you're going to need some help, our teachers will be available every school day in our calendar. Don't forget, I've lost track of my days here recently, but I believe next Friday and the following Monday, the school district is closed and was closed for various professional development days or holidays. So those are days where we are still going to honor the district calendar and those days will be closed. But outside of that, yeah, reach out proactively, email them at any time, and they'll work with you with the best system to get that help that you need.
Okay, and the last three I can address relatively quickly. How GPA will be calculated. If you refer back to Dr. Ryba's email with all of the information about how grades will look, it'll factor in just like typically the semester grade would be. As far, again, as returning spring sports, uniforms, that's all going to need to be run through the board for reimbursements. We do understand uniforms and some of those specific instances in which you may have already paid. And the last one was about, is it possible to post some of this work Sunday night? I do feel at the secondary level, teachers are working ahead. So we don't promise it will be posted ahead of time, but I have some confidence that teachers will post even if it's not Monday at 8 a.m. They'll be working ahead. And that completes, I'm sorry, there's one more that just came in. What about a high school issued instrument? And they're going to need that for next school year. Any possibility to, get that from the building?
Yeah, so thanks for bringing that up. Whoever wrote that question. As Mr. Breckner said, we do have a schedule of students being able to get into the building and get their stuff from the locker. We're just waiting on those dates. I met with the high school administrative team yesterday in the middle school. And so one of the things we talked about is our instrumental music directors being available to oversee and getting kids, not only their instruments if they own them, but school-owned instruments to practice. So I can't give specifics on what that will look like. Only know that we are working with our instrumental music departments to get kids access during this closure to their instruments. And I did want to extend on, Aaron, something you said in terms of posting the plans Sunday night. Please know that once these plans are posted online at the secondary level, they will be live the whole time. We told our teachers that by Monday at 8 a.m. or the first day of a school week at 8 a.m., like the Tuesday after the holiday, they have to have the lesson plans for the week posted. You'll notice that some of them have them posted for the entire month of April. So once they're posted live, you can work at your own pace. If you want to work beyond the week of April 6th and take care of April 13th, and maybe you love English language arts and you want to work on English and do all of the work for English at one time and then move on to all of the work at math, this should be options, choice, self-paced for you based on what works. But the teachers, everything for April 6th, the week of April 6th in that column will be up and ready no later than 8 a.m. on Monday, April 6th. Additional plans, if they're not already linked, will be available the following Monday by 8 a.m. So people can access them at that time. Aaron, I know you said that was the last question, but did we truly cover everything that's in there? Are we good?
We are good. Thank you.
Well, parents, I just want to thank you so much for joining us. I want to thank you for submitting your questions, collaborating with us, the support that you're providing. These are unprecedented times for all of us. And we're all working as hard as we can to do what's in the best interest of our families and our kids. And I appreciate all that you're doing to help support. And if we can continue to help you in any way, please reach out to your teachers, reach out to your building administrators or our district staff that has been on the chat with you today. And as I shared earlier, please mark it down. Next Thursday, same time, we'll do another live stream. We will answer your questions that you posted already that we didn't get to. We'll answer some of your questions that may have been submitted today that we didn't get to. And I'm sure after living in the remote learning world for another week, we'll have some new questions and new decisions to make. So once again, thank you. I appreciate all that you're doing to help support our kids in our district during this time. And I look forward to our continued work, even remotely, through this format together. Have a great rest of your day.